Good afternoon, Liberty fans, and welcome to another edition of Sports Talk with Rags here in Season 3, Episode 90. And today, here we are honored here to have a Sea of Red founder, John Manson. John, how you doing this afternoon?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me on your show, Mark.
Sure, no problem. Appreciate your time, and let's start at the beginning. Let's tell the fans here what is a Sea of Red and how did it start?
Sure. So, a Sea of Red, for those of you that don't know or might not know, it's a website devoted to covering Liberty University athletics, and we cover all the teams, all the sports, from football to indoor track and field. So, obviously, some sports, get a little bit more of our time, football, men's basketball, baseball, but we touch on all the sports at Liberty, and it's a website I started back in 2012. I was a student at Liberty. Graduated in 2006, became a Liberty fan at that time, and kind of just became very passionate for the Flames, and I used to get on a message board and talk about them, but then I decided, hey, I'm going to start a blog, and 11 years later, and a lot of success for the Flames on the field, on the court. And here we are, but yeah, so we're at seared.com, and we're on all the socials, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, etc. We have a podcast we do pretty much weekly during the regular season, which is during the regular athletic season, starting in August into September and runs through the spring. But that's we're actually thinking about, and this is a little bit of breaking news, but we're actually thinking about making it a year-long podcast, maybe not weekly in the summer, but at least monthly, if not bi-monthly. So, but that's on, YouTube, as well as, SoundCloud and Apple Podcast, Spotify, all your places you can get your podcast audio version. So that's a quick and dirty. I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more as we go.
Yes, well, hey, let's since you talked about here the success, and before we get to football, I mean, I did have Coach McKay on, and I know that he's technically back, serving his second time leading Liberty men's basketball. But boy, what a great tenure he's definitely did. The first time that he led Liberty men's basketball, went up the road to be an assistant with Coach Bennett at UVA, but then to come back and moving into the new arena. I mean, just Liberty men's basketball. Coach McKay's been doing a great job.
Yeah, and Coach McKay is probably the one guy that I've gotten to know more than anyone in doing this, just because of the length of his tenure. I mean, like you said, he was here back before I started to see a red, and I was kind of following the teams closely, and didn't get to know him much then, but just knew him from a distance. Like you follow your favorite team, you get to know their coach a little bit. And then, like you said, he went to UVA and still kind of kept tabs on them and their program. I grew up a University of Virginia fan, so I was always fond of them. And so I kept my tabs on them then. And then when he came back, I was excited about it. I knew he had become a better coach and had matured a lot as far as his coaching philosophies. He's always been an offensive minded coach. And then to kind of piggyback that with Coach Bennett and his pack line system, and like he talks about, he got a master's in the pack line while he was there, and bring that back to Liberty. The program has been on a trajectory straight up, and I couldn't be more proud of what he's done and what the program's done, and happy for the program and those kids that he has on his team currently they're wonderful kids, both on the court and off the court. I mean, they're great to talk to and very mature young men, and they're a lot of fun. So Coach McKay's done a terrific job guiding that program, and got to 3 straight ASUN championships, and I've been knocking on the door for a championship, basically competing for it each of the past, I guess you could say 6 seasons, which 5 of those 6 years they made it to a conference championship game losing two of them on a last second shot to Radford the last year in the Big South, and then to Kennesaw State the last year in the A-Sun. And then those were sandwiched in between was the three championships. And now in Conference USA, I think they'll compete once again for a seventh straight season for another conference championship this year.
Yes, and I missed the game against Florida Atlantic, but Florida Atlantic, they're certainly on a nice run, but I definitely saw the game last weekend, and it's definitely nice. I mean, I know with Mid Atlantic Sports Network and Comcast, Liberty basketball has always been in the regional cable network. But on those two games here recently, definitely nice to see men's basketball there on ESPNU. And that game against Grand Canyon there this past Saturday, I think their height and everything, got to Liberty, but seeing them on ESPN networks is definitely nice to see.
Yeah, and I think we'll see more of that as this relationship with Conference USA continues. We saw it in football with some games on ESPNU, and obviously ESPN Plus has been there for a while, but CBS Sports Network as well. And then men's basketball has a similar relationship with both CBS Sports Network and ESPN. For the Conference USA. So we'll see several conference games that are on those platforms as well as a conference tournament. Same thing with women's basketball and even baseball. You'll see a few games there, including their conference championship games, which, we've talked a lot about it at ASEA Red about the move to Conference USA over the past, almost 2 years now since it was announced. I guess it's been 2 years. So, we talked a lot about it, but, one of the biggest changes and benefits for Liberty is the brand outreach just from the network deals that Conference USA is able to have. It's something that as a Liberty fan, as a Liberty supporter, we haven't seen in the A-Sun or in the Big South or previously.
Yes, and and to one of the reasons why I reached out to you here, with Liberty football. I mean, 2014, that fall is when my wife and I started becoming Flames Club members and football season ticket holders when one of our nephews started going there, and they competed for Big South championships and getting into the FCS playoffs, but and having a nice win against JMU, during the playoffs. But it's definitely nice to see the growth of Liberty football.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it a lot there, but when I was a student in 2005, Ken Karcher was the head coach, and my last year as a student, the team went 1-10 in the FCS, no less. I mean, we're not talking about FBS, we're talking about FCS or 1AA back in the day, which I think it was 1AA at that time. But anyways, we went 1-10, and I can remember sitting in the computer lab. Or maybe the library, actually, I think it was the first floor of DeMoss when the library was there. And that's when I heard that King Karcher was had been fired. The athletic department had been fired. Athletic director had been fired, I meant to say. And, it was quite a day for Liberty Athletics. But I think that was really the turning point of when this all started was then. And yeah, I mean, it started back in this early 70s when, 1971, when Jerry Sr. founded the school. Yeah, sure. It started and there's been a continual trend up. But I think this, what I refer to as the modern era of Liberty Athletics started back that day when those changes were made. And then, Danny Rocco was hired as a football coach from UVA, and Jeff Barber from South Carolina was hired as the athletic director. And the programs have been, how do you say it? They've been, launched into the stratosphere, if you want to call it that way. Just the growth they've made. I mean, back then, Williams Stadium sat 12,000 people, and they had no, the locker rooms, which is that small building in one end zone of the stadium, which is now where the berm is and the LU logo behind that one end zone. And they, since built the football operations center, which is now called the Liberty Football Operations Center, Liberty Football Center, and continual expansion for all sports. Football, it gets all the publicity, but there's a softball stadium now that was basically like an intramural field back by the dorms in the back of campus, back of main campus, and baseball got a brand new stadium. Liberty Arena has been built. Obviously, Williams Stadium has gotten added onto. Got an on-campus ice hockey rink, which, again, that's not an NCAA sport. But when I was a student, you just had to go to Roanoke to watch the team play hockey. And now, I mean, they sell out that stadium, even having to sell tickets to students, since it's not an NCAA sponsored sport. But yeah, football is kind of leads the way for all athletic departments, but especially for Liberty. Making the move to to Danny Rocco. When Danny Rocco came in, the team immediately became competitive in the Big South and went from being kind of an also ran as an FCS member to competing for conference championships and won 3 straight. Starting with his second year there, kind of topped. Coastal Carolina was a big dog in the conference when he came in, and that's when the Beat Coastal rivalry all started, and everybody was printing those shirts and wearing them around town and around campus, and Liberty, went past Coastal Carolina and got some conference championships under their belt, and then the Big South continued to grow, and the Big South got the automatic bid to the FCS playoffs there after Danny Rocco's tenure when Turner Gill took over, and Coach Gill led it to the next level, where you were able to get into the FCS playoffs, beat JMU like you mentioned, and took Villanova right to the wire there in that second game of the playoffs. But then Ian McCaw, not enough is said about the job he's done as Liberty's athletic director. He came in and when Liberty was still an FCS member, just had that one ever FCS playoff appearance and got them over the hump to get into the FBS, which is something the athletic programs has been trying to do for decades. And he was able to get it done in short order. And from there, behind his coach hirings and Hugh Freeze and now Jamie Chadwell and the resources that's been put behind the athletic program and the football program specifically, we've seen 5 straight bowl trips as an FBS member, your first 5 years as an FBS bowl eligible team, and then obviously this year going undefeated, winning Conference USA championship, and being ranked in the CFP top 25 for the first time ever, and getting into the Fiesta Bowl to play Oregon. And I wrote an article about it on See It Red earlier this month since the Fiesta Bowl announcement came out, and Liberty's not a one-hit flash in the pan type team. Some teams like Oregon and their fans might think that's what it is, but it's not. Liberty's been around for a long time. They've obviously continued to rise and go to another level, but this is the 3rd time in 4 years Liberty's been ranked in the top 25. If you're looking at the AP and the coaches poll, this is the team's won at least 6 games every year since 2006. And won 8 games every year since Hugh Freeze, at least 8 games every year since Hugh Freeze was the head coach. So that's 5 straight years now. And like I mentioned, 5 straight bowl appearances. So this is a team that, recently you heard from Hugh Freeze and now Coach Chadwell and Ian McCaw that the goal was for Liberty, or is for Liberty, to be the preeminent group of 5 team, and I think they've reached that status. I mean, if not, they're certainly in competition for it. As they're the Group of 5 champion this year, being the highest ranked team in the Group of 5, getting the Fiesta Bowl bid, the New Year's Six Bowl bid. So it's been an amazing ascent, and it's one that I don't think that Liberty's done with yet.
Yeah, and the thing is, some people wanted to know, why they once the football team went to FBS, they went from Atlantic Sun in other sports to Conference USA. Well, when the athletic department first went to Atlantic Sun, there was no football conference, so the football team had to play as an independent, and you got to find those games, and they qualified for bowls, and just moving on to Conference USA. I mean, nowadays, just about a majority of the bowls have some type of contract there with Conference USA, and it's just what first year in the Conference USA, they talked about playing for conference championships. They did that, possible New Year's Six. They did that. And here back, if you were at Williams Stadium for the spring game, you didn't know how this team was going to perform.
No, you really didn't, and and I'm not speaking hyperbole. A movie could probably be written about this team this season. I mean, just what they've gone through. I mean, you go back a year ago this time, prior to the December signing period. Hugh Freeze left. Liberty got embarrassed on their home field against New Mexico State. When Diego Pavi had 6 touchdowns and just was running all over the field, running and throwing all over the field, I should say. It was really an embarrassing performance by the Flames. And of course, the news came out just a couple hours ahead of kickoff that Coach Freeze was likely headed to Auburn, and obviously the players were distracted by that, and understandably so. But to go from that point to where we are today, it's been an incredible ride these past 12 months. And it started with the hiring of Coach Chadwell, which came just 4 days after Freeze was announced to go to Auburn. And, so that was incredible timing and quick turnaround, like under Ian McCall, like I was just talking about him, the job he's done. And to get a guy like Coach Chadwell, a guy with, one of the top G5 coaches in the entire country, and for him to leave as a sitting head coach to come to another G5 team, a former rival. We were just talking about the Beat Coastal rivalry, and that, I joke now saying that rivalry's dead. Like once you go and get their head coach, like the rivalry's dead. So, but Coach Chadwell is, been a national coach of the year, conference coach of the year for years, and he talked about how it was a dream of his to one day be Liberty's head coach, and now he is, and he had to navigate with the transfer portal. You had 50% roster turnover, and over 40 new scholarship players on the team this year that weren't on the team in 2022, and to go through that. And again, we forget now. I mean, Caden Salters had an amazing season. I mean, he really could have been and should have probably been in the discussion for maybe being a Heisman Trophy finalist. I mean, he had that type of year if you look at his numbers. Right. But we forget back, 4 or 5 months ago, like, we had no idea who Liberty's quarterback was going to be. Was it going to be him? I mean, he had a lot of talent, but he was very raw and unproven, going back to last year. And then, Jonathan Bennett, who notched some big wins in his Liberty career, most notably Arkansas and BYU. But at the same time, maybe the potential under him wasn't quite to the same level that it would be under a guy like Salter. So, Coach Chadwell and his offense coordinator, co-offense coordinator, quarterback coach, Willie Corn, had to navigate that thing. Then you had the tragic death of Taj Boyd back in training camp, and just how difficult that had to go through at, obviously for his family and his close friends, but also for his teammates. I mean, they had basically been family for months going back to when he got on campus in the spring, and to go through that is, heartbreaking, obviously. And I mean, that was, they talk about him being their brother, and to have a first year coaching staff to kind of lead you through that. I'm sure that was a big point and a big rallying cry that they could kind of all come together under. And then, but even still, like, nobody could have expected Liberty to go 13-0. Nobody. I mean, yeah, we can talk about, the poor strength of schedule and all that stuff. And a lot of that was out of their control due to having to make the quick turnaround from being an FBS to joining Conference USA. And Conference USA is still trying to find their legs. And nobody knew New Mexico State was going to be a 10-win team and be able to beat an SEC team. Nobody knew Jacksonville State was going to win 8 games and compete at the top of the conference in their first year. Western Kentucky had a little bit of a down year, but to get to 13-0, it's quite remarkable. What the job? I mean, you really can't put into words the job that Coach Chadwell has done this first season.
Yes, and one of the weeknight games here with there in October, Sam Houston State, and we punted the ball deep in Sam Houston State's territory, and my dad looked at me and said, this is kind of setting up for, Sam Houston State there to go on the long drive. And sure enough, next thing you knew, it was a goal line stance that needed to be done by Liberty, and so they held serve there. Jackson State, coached by Rich Rod, and New Mexico State. I mean, Jerry Gill was at Minnesota. I mean, so here in Conference USA, I mean, there's really no no slouch. I mean, so just one game at a time. And here it was from like 52 Sundays from when Coach Chadwell was announced on selection Sunday. They get picked to go to the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, what an amazing moment that was for Liberty fans too. I mean, you think about, everybody that has poured into the program over the years. This is the 50th year of Liberty football, and to have that type of success in that 50th year is awesome. But that moment, just such an amazing moment. One that Liberty fans will always remember. Where you were, and what you were doing when you heard and saw that Liberty was going to be in the Fiesta Bowl. And again, it's the first of what I think will be many more accomplishments to come, and as this program continues to build and raise the bar to what's next. And I mean, just a few years ago, we were talking about, Hugh Freeze in his introductory press conference 5 years ago was talking about, our goal is to make it to a bowl game. Well, I mean, now you're 5 years into it, and it's like, oh, we became bowl eligible. Okay, nice. I can remember, some Liberty fans were debating, should that even be celebrated? And in my opinion, yes, it should be. And I think Coach Chadwell did a good job of saying, yeah, it's a checkpoint. Like it's good. It should be, recognized, but at the same time, we're not going to sit here and throw a big party middle of the season because we got to 6 wins and we're bowl eligible. But it's something that should be recognized, and that's 5 years ago we weren't saying that. 5 years ago it was like, you get bowl eligible, man, this is great. And that's also part of joining Conference USA. You still had that conference championship that you were competing for and playing for, not something the team had previously. But it was a big day, a monumental day for Liberty athletics, for Liberty football, and like I said, my heart goes out to all Liberty fans, but to those that have, been a part of this football team, previous players, previous coaches, obviously the current players, current coaches, and all the administration throughout the years that has kind of helped this program get to this point. It's been a great ride and a great journey. And I know several fans that have been fans since back in the 80s and probably even back to the 70s. And they talk about some of those, struggles of getting, just getting to practice and just getting to games. And some they played, you wouldn't even recognize their name, but quite a story and quite a, journey this team has had this year, but over the past 50 years.
Yes, and even with beating BYU, they just the last couple years and becoming bowl eligible. The last couple years in the month of November, they have not had good record, and so with new coaching staff, 50% player turnover. They're going in, turning the page, going to November, that was still out there, but they pretty much held serve and ended up opening the bench there in the last quarter. And, they just took one game at a time, every game go 1-0.
Yeah, they really did, and that was definitely a mentality that you could see that the team had from Coach Chadwell, and it wasn't so much like, a lot of times when teams get to 8-0, 9-0, 10-0, you can see that pressure kind of building up, and I think it was kind of a little bit of an issue, in mid to late October. You talk about the Sam Houston game, maybe the Middle Tennessee game, but I feel like once they got over that hump, once they beat Western Kentucky, who was a preseason favorite in Conference USA on the road, and kind of dominated them. That was a multi-score win and an impressive performance. That it felt like the team kind of got over that hump of the pressure that they were playing under, and more it was like, let's just be the best we can be. And Coach Chadwell pushed all the right buttons. I mean, he pushed the buttons of we're not getting respect that we deserve. Even after beating Western Kentucky, the team was 8-0 and still not ranked in the top 25 polls. And you looked at, like team like in Harrisonburg, JMU, and they were undefeated, but they were ranked. Why aren't we getting the respect we deserve? And the team kind of bought into that, and they played some of their best football in the month of November. There was a few games, like quarter here and there, like the ODU game is 35-3 in the second quarter. It ended up being 38-10. Well, so the second half didn't go so well, but obviously the game's different when it's 38-3. You're just trying to 35-3. You're just trying to put the team away, eat up the clock and, keep your team healthy and rested and ready for the next game. And same thing happened in some of the other games. UTEP, Liberty was up, I think it was like 42-10 or something like that. I forget exactly what the score was. And UTEP scored, 2 or 3 touchdowns in the last 4 minutes of the game. So the final score looked a lot closer than it really was. But yeah, they really were able to block out all the distractions and focus on the task at hand each and every week. And only 4 other teams or 3 other teams, 4 total teams, including Liberty, were able to do that so far this year. As you got the 4 unbeatens heading into bowl season with Liberty, Florida State, Washington, and who's the other one? Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah. And, just pulling up October there was no Saturday games, with the Conference USA contract between CBS Sports Network or ESPNU, and then that month of November, 56-30, Louisiana Tech, 38-10, ODU, 49-25 against UMass. And that was, with it being the last home game, they definitely opened up the bench. And then let's see, 6 touchdowns there against UTEP. And if you were late turning the UTEP game on, it was already Liberty in cruise control.
Yeah, they jumped out to a big lead early there. And again, I don't remember all the details off the top of my head, but I think it was like 14-0 5 minutes into the game, and it's kind of like, okay, this one's just semantics at this point in time because Liberty's better than UTEP. Just a matter of closing the door and finishing this thing out strong, and that's what they were able to do. And then that Conference USA Championship game was really a classic game. Not much defense was played on either side, but New Mexico State and Liberty kind of traded blows, traded punches throughout the game and going back and forth. And it kind of felt like whoever had the ball last was going to win that. But then Liberty did get a couple of key stops there in the fourth quarter, didn't give up any points in the fourth quarter and pulled out, that 14-point victory. And it was a lot of fun to be there and to witness that first ever conference championship at the FBS level and to, have a, pretty stacked or packed Williams Stadium to witness that with the students, and the fans rushing the field after the game was something that I'm sure everybody there will always remember that too. So, it's really been a storybook season, and like I said, one that a movie could be made about it.
Yeah, and the thing about the conference championship game, I think it was Matt Warner there on the Liberty Flames Central podcast, said how there on December 1st, with it being Friday night and kickoff was at 7, the Pac-12 didn't kick off until 8. So that first hour, if you're flipping, conference championship game on Friday, that first hour, nothing else was on for conference championship games except for Conference USA. And in that first hour, it was, like you said, exchanging punches. It was a back and forth game.
Yeah, it really was, and you're right. Only 2 games on in all the college football, all of including the NFL. No games at that level either. So only 2 games on to watch, and Liberty was the only one the first hour, like you mentioned. But and how fitting is it that it was the Pac-12 championship game going on as now you've got Liberty and Oregon playing against each other. About a month later. Well, actually, it will be exactly a month to the day. December 1st to January 1st as they play in the Fiesta Bowl out there in Arizona.
Yes, and I also agree with where I heard, that they're on Selection Sunday. Once the Orange Bowl and the Peach Bowl were determined, it was a little bit nervous on, is the Fiesta Bowl gonna go with a team that is in Dallas, and could somehow SMU, jump Liberty. But wow, just awesome to see Flames Nation. And the Fiesta Bowl started in 1971.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool little coincidence there too. And both Fiesta Bowl and Liberty starting in 1971. But yeah, you mentioned SMU, and there was some debate about whether it should be Liberty or SMU getting that nod. And it's hard to overlook the 13-0 record.
Right.
I mean SMU, they had a good season, right? I mean they were 11-2, and they played, they had a stronger strength of schedule. But one thing that I think gets lost in some of that is just because you have a stronger strength of schedule doesn't mean you're the better team, right? I mean, there's teams out there that might have a really good strength of schedule, and I'm sure there's been years a team had a top 10 strength of schedule, but they might have gone 0-12. Like just because you play good teams doesn't mean you're a good team yourself. So I think SMU got a little bit of credit for having two Power Five games. They played Oklahoma and TCU, which good for them. But at the same time, they lost those games. Like they had their opportunities and they lost them. They lost. And TCU was not the TCU of last year that made it to the conference or to the national championship
Right.
game where they lost, but they, to Georgia. But this is a TCU team that went 5-7. They're not playing in a bowl game this year, so it's not the same thing. They didn't have the same season they did last year. So that's really, in my opinion, that's not a good loss. Just lose just because you get to play a Power Five team. That doesn't mean that you deserve anything. I mean, you lost those games. So how good? My whole thing is, when you're talking about strength of schedule comparing Liberty to SMU, is how good are your wins? What's the strength of your wins? And yes, SMU had a win over Tulane, who was ranked in the top 25 at the time. That was a very good win, probably better than any win Liberty had. But Liberty's two wins over New Mexico State was a very good win.
Right.
Or they're both very good wins. The win over Jacksonville State was a good win. Bowling Green is another team that made it to a bowl game. I think they won 7 games. They also beat Georgia Tech, who's another bowl eligible team. And then we talked about New Mexico State, who beat Auburn, and Auburn's also in a bowl game. So not some of Liberty's opponents that they beat other Power Five teams that are even in bowl games. So in the Bowling Green game, if that was played later in the year, I think some would have looked at that and said, "Oh wow, maybe that's not a." You look at a MAC team, you think, "Oh, that's nothing," but a lot of those wins Liberty had were better than they were, and at the same time, you can only play the games that are on your schedule. You take care of business, and that's what Liberty did. And like I said, SMU, I think I forget all the numbers. I was into it deep back then, but been out of it for a couple weeks now, focusing on Oregon and the Fiesta Bowl. But Liberty had more wins over bowl eligible teams. Liberty had more wins over teams with winning records, and I think Liberty, and as the committee decided, Liberty rightly deserved the honor of being able to represent the Group of Five in the New Year's Six bowl game this year.
Yes, and John, I'm sorry that things have gone over, but I know that definitely a lot to cover here with Liberty football. So
Well, that's probably my fault. I talk a lot. I'm long winded, and it's fun to talk. So
yes, yes. Are you able to make the trip out to Arizona?
yeah, we'll be going out there. I've been fortunate enough to make it to all 5 bowl games now. This is obviously the 5th one. So the other ones were a lot easier to get to. I drove to all of them. They were within driving distance. Now that trip to Boca last year was a long drive, but I'm fortunate enough to be able to make it out, and my family's going with me. So we fly out a couple of days ahead of the game, be staying out in the Scottsdale area, where I think a lot of the Liberty fans are staying, and that's where the team hotel is. That's where the Flames Club hotel is, and so I'm looking forward to that. Should be a great weekend, great New Year's weekend with a lot of Liberty fans out there in Arizona, and then looking forward to the starting the new year with some Liberty football on January 1st. Something that I didn't think would happen so quickly. Something I always hoped and dreamed it would happen in my lifetime, but didn't think it would be this quick.
Right, and I know that we have stuff going on at the home front, but definitely New Year's, and even with Liberty Flames Radio, starting their coverage at 11, they're on New Year's Day, but ready to root for the football team. They're kicking off New Year's Day, and looking forward to following the Sea of Red there on social media platforms and all the other different platforms that are supporting Liberty football in this in this journey here. First year being CUSA members, and come next year, I mean, if everyone stays healthy, I think they got a good shot of repeating for that conference championship.
Yeah, I think as long as Liberty's in Conference USA, they should be right there in the thick of things. I mean, you never know. You get a bad bounce here, a bad bounce there, and you could lose one of those pivotal games or the conference championship game or something like that. But yeah, I expect Liberty to always be competing for that Conference USA championship each and every year. Winning it's another story. It's tough to win championships, and these other teams have good coaches and good players themselves too. But we've seen what Coach Chadwell has done. I mean, he's I think it's 44-6 now in his last 4 seasons, and three of those losses were his last 3 games at Coastal, which of course he was looking at other jobs, and again I'm not saying that that's an excuse, but if you take those 3 games out, he's like 44-3, and the only coaches with more wins than him during that time period are coaching Georgia and Alabama right now. So he's been pretty successful the past few years, and there's no reason to think the success will stop as long as he's at Liberty.
Yes. Well, hey, John, appreciate your time. And Flames fan, if you haven't heard of Sea of Red coverage, go and go to those social media platforms, and they're on Apple Podcasts and YouTube, and check John's coverage out of a Sea of Red that supports Liberty athletics, and definitely hear a lot of coverage here with the New Year, with the Fiesta Bowl appearance, right?
Yeah, no doubt. We've had a lot of coverage out there, and it's a group effort for us. Appreciate the shout out, Mark. It's a group effort. We got a podcast we're working on for next week as we record this here on Friday afternoon. But we got an episode coming out next week to kind of really dive deep into the Oregon game and that matchup. And my co-host Richie Longshots is an interesting character. He's a lot of fun. So you haven't watched or listened to our podcast, please do that. It's a lot of fun. And then Chad Hassan's a big contributor for us as well too. And Zach McLaren kind of runs our social media. And we have a lot of fun there. Also, CT gets on the podcast with us some as well. So it's a group effort, and we have a lot of fun. We are all Liberty fans at heart, and it's just a great place for us. It's really I look at it as it's a community. It's something that's for Liberty fans. My whole goal behind the Sea of Red is to kind of help build the Liberty fan base, if that's anything that's possible to happen. Is if you're kind of on the fringe of being a Liberty fan, well, maybe through some of the coverage that a Sea of Red's able to provide, that you can become a more passionate fan. And if you're a college football fan and you like and you're at Liberty and you're a student, then hopefully you can get connected with us, and that passion can turn over to passion for the Flames. And because it's all we're, like you said, Mark, we are a young university, just 50 years in existence. So our alumni base is young as well. And I don't think any of us grew up Liberty fans, but that's starting to change. The next generation as they come up, some of them are growing up Liberty fans. My kids, they wear the red and blue Liberty colors, and a lot of my friends around the same age as me do the same. Their kids do the same as well. So the fan base is growing, and we have a lot of fun at a Sea of Red, and happy to support it. And when the teams are winning as much as they are, it's a lot of fun and real easy to cover them.
Yes, and I told my wife that with having this platform, and I've followed your coverage. Appreciate your time for coming on, because I've tried to. I know that things are busy, but trying to do some episodes here called Flames Friday here on Sports Talk with Rags, and I'm currently in talk with Brylan Green's family. Maybe get him on here before the Christmas break. And so appreciate your time, and go Flames.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me on once again, Mark.
Sure thing. Well, hey, Flames, to use the school's slogan, Flames Nation, just had to get John Manson, a Liberty fan that does Sea of Red to come on and talk more Liberty athletics, and especially with the success of Liberty football. So thanks again for your time there, John, and go Flames.